Imagine living on a planet where a single year lasts longer than recorded human history. Not hundreds, not thousands, but 90,000 Earth years. On this world, entire civilizations would rise and fall. Languages would appear and disappear. Empires would rise, collapse, and be forgotten before the planet even completes one orbit around its star. It sounds impossible, almost like science fiction, but in the vast universe, this kind of world could exist. So what kind of planet would have such an extreme year? How far away would it need to be from its star? What would the sky look like from its surface? And most importantly, could anything actually survive there? To understand this, we first need to rethink something very simple: what a year actually means. A year is not a fixed number. It's not naturally 365 days everywhere. A year is simply the time a planet takes one full orbit around its star. On Earth, that journey takes 365 days, but that's only because of where we are. We orbit at just the right distance from the Sun, close enough to feel its gravity strongly, but not so close that we move too fast. Now, imagine moving Earth farther away. Not just a little, but much, much farther. As distance increases, gravity becomes weaker, and when gravity weakens, orbital speed decreases. That means the planet moves slower, and the path that travels becomes much larger. This relationship is described by Kepler's third law, one of the fundamental rules of how planets move. It tells us that the farther a planet is from its star, the longer its orbital period becomes, not linearly, but dramatically. Double the distance and the year becomes much longer. Increase it even more and the time stretches beyond imagination. So if a planet were placed extremely far from its star, its year wouldn't just be longer, it could last thousands, tens of thousands, even 90,000 Earth years. And this isn't just theory. Astronomers have already discovered objects that behave in similar ways. Far beyond the familiar planets and solar systems, there are distant regions filled with icy bodies, remnants from the formation of stars and planets. These objects exist in the outermost edges where sunlight is weak and temperatures are incredibly low. Some of them follow enormous, stretched-out paths, what scientists call elliptical orbits. Instead of moving in near-perfect circles like Earth, they travel in long, elongated loops. For most of their journey, they are extremely far away from their star, moving slowly through deep space. Then, after thousands of years, they swing closer for a brief period before drifting back out into the darkness again. A planet with a 90,000-year orbit would likely follow a path like this. For the vast majority of its year, it would exist in near total darkness. Now, imagine standing on the surface of such a world. Look up at the sky. You wouldn't see a bright sun like we do on Earth. Instead, the star would look like a distant point of light, brighter than other stars, but still small and cold-looking. There would be no warm sunlight on your skin, no blue sky scattering light across the atmosphere. In fact, the sky might appear almost completely black even during what would technically be day. The surface beneath you would likely be frozen solid, not just cold, but unimaginably cold. Temperatures could drop hundreds of degrees below zero. Any exposed water would instantly freeze. Oceans, if they existed, would be locked beneath thick layers of ice, possibly kilometers deep. Wind, if there is an atmosphere, would be slow and heavy, moving through a dense, freezing environment. Everything would feel still, silent, almost lifeless. But the most fascinating part of this planet isn't just the environment, it's time itself. On Earth, time is something we experience through cycles, day and night, seasons, years. We celebrate birthdays every year. We measure our lives in decades. History is organized in timelines, centuries, millennia. But on this distant world, a year would lose all meaning. No human could ever experience one full orbit. If you were born there, you would live your entire life without seeing even the smallest fraction of a year pass. Your children wouldn't either, or their children. In fact, thousands of generations could come and go before that planet completes one journey around its star. Think about that. Everything humanity has ever done, from the pyramids of Egypt to modern cities to space exploration, all would fit into just a tiny fraction of 1 year on that planet. History itself would feel like a brief moment. So, could anything actually live in a place like this? At first glance, it seems impossible. There's almost no heat from the star, very little light, extreme cold. Conditions that would instantly destroy most forms of life we know. But scientists don't rule it out completely, because life finds a way in the most unexpected places. Even in our own solar system, there are moons far from the sun, like Europa and Enceladus, that may hide liquid oceans beneath their icy surfaces. These oceans aren't warmed by sunlight, but internal heat. Heat generated from radioactive decay deep inside the core, or from gravitational forces stretching and squeezing the planet's interior. If a distant planet had similar internal energy, it could maintain liquid water beneath its frozen surface. And where there is liquid water, there is at least the possibility of life. Not complex life like animals or humans, but simple organisms, microscopic, resilient, surviving in total darkness beneath kilometers of ice. Life that doesn't rely on sunlight, but on chemical energy from the planet itself. It would be a completely different kind of ecosystem, alien, yet still alive. And thinking about such a world changes how we see our own. Here on Earth, we often take time for granted. A year feels long, seasons feel predictable, our lives feel structured and measurable. But compared to a planet where 1 year lasts 90,000 Earth years, our entire existence is incredibly brief. We live on a world that moves quickly, orbiting a warm, bright star in just the right place for life to thrive. A rare balance, a fragile balance. While somewhere out there in the dark edges of a distant system, a lonely planet continues its slow journey, moving silently through space, barely touched by light, taking 90,000 years just to complete one.
You can stand under my umbrella, ella, ella.